All right, we're back, and now we're actually going to solve equations by completing the square. So I have this first example here with the table because it has all the steps in it in case you forget what the steps are, so you have this right next to you when you work on your problems. So solve the equation by completing the square, then state whether the solutions are real or non-real. Here's my equation up at the top, x squared plus 6x minus 2 equals 0. So in order to complete the square, step 1 is write the equation in the form x squared plus bx equals c. So what I need to do is I need to subtract that constant term to the other side, that 2. Well, I'd have to add it because it's a negative 2, because that's not a perfect square trinomial with the 2 there. We're going to make it one. So that means I'm going to add 2 to both sides. So my correct form is x squared plus 6x equals 2. So I have done step 1. Step 2 is complete the square. Add the perfect square to both sides to keep the equation balanced. So what it means is I have this x squared plus 6x on the left side. What I'm going to do is figure out what is that perfect square that's going to make that a perfect square trinomial. But because I'm adding that number to the left, I'm also going to have to add that number to the right. So remember how we complete the square. We take half of b, so 6 divided by 2 is 3, and we square that. 3 squared is 9. So I'm going to add 9 on the left, I'm going to add 9 on the right. Okay, so we completed the square. That was step 2. Next, it says, write the left side of the equation in factored form. So remember, that's a binomial squared. So remember that our binomial is always x plus half of b, so that's 3 quantity squared. So I just rewrote this in factored form. Now I do need to pay attention to the right side. I can take 2 plus 9, okay, that's 11. Okay, now I have an equation that I can simply solve by following step 4. Take the square root of both sides, because what I have is a perfect square here on the left. X plus 3 quantity squared. Well, if I want to undo the square, I can take the square root. And so that's going to cancel out. This radical cancels that squared. So all I'm left with then on the left is x plus 3. On the right, I have to account for my positive or negative square root of 11. And now I just solve for x. To get x by itself, I'm going to subtract 3. So I'm going to have x equals. Now, I'm not going to write this with the 3 on the back because this is plus or minus square root of 11. So I'm going to write negative 3 in front, plus or minus the square root of 11. Because what that means is I have one solution, which is negative 3 plus the square root of 11, and I have another solution, which is negative 3 minus the square root of 11. And those are real numbers, so I have 2 real solutions. All right, cool. We're going to do the next 2 examples in the video. Here we go. Solve each equation by completing the square. State whether the solutions are real or non-real. So step 1 is to toss that constant term to the other side. So we're going to subtract 7. And I have x squared minus 2x. I'm going to leave a little space because I'm going to have to complete that square, equals negative 7. So remember, we're going to have to complete this square. So I'm going to add something there, which means I also have to add it to the other side. To complete the square, remember that I take half of b. b is negative 2. So negative 2 divided by 2. So this is my b divided by 2 is negative 1. And then I square that. That's going to be a positive 1. So I guess I'm going to add 1 to both sides. Then I write my left side in factored form. Remember, that's always x plus or minus your half of b. Well, my b is negative, so that's going to be minus 1. Okay, half of negative 2 is negative 1 squared equals, and then I do the math on the right side. Negative 7 plus 1 is negative 6. Now that I have this binomial squared on the left, now that is our goal, so that our next step is to solve by taking square roots on both sides. When I do that, the radical and the square cancel, and I just have x minus 1 equals plus or minus the square root of negative 6. Now, before I add the 1 over, we know that when we have a negative under the radical, it's imaginary. So I'm going to take that I out and make that I times the square root of positive 6. My last step is to add 1 And remember, we're going to write that number in front and write it as 1 plus or minus I times the square root of 6. Because I have an I in there, I have non-real solutions. 2 of them. And finally, B, x squared plus 8x plus 17. I need to get this C value to the other side. So I'm going to subtract 17. X squared plus 8x plus, I'm going to leave a blank there for when I complete my square. Got to add that to both sides. Okay, let's complete our square. We are going to take half of B. So 8 divided by 2 is 4. And we are going to square it. That's 16. And 16 on the other side. Now write our binomial squared. So on the left side, that's going to be x plus 4 quantity squared. On the right side, negative 17 plus 16 is negative 1. And finally, I can solve by taking square roots of both sides, where my radical and square cancel each other. So on the left, I'm just left with x plus 4. On the right, plus or minus the square root of negative 1. Hey, we know the square root of negative 1 is just I, so I just have plus or minus I. And finally, I need to subtract 4. So x equals negative 4 plus or minus I. And those are non-real solutions because we got an I in there. Okay, block day tomorrow, so we'll be finishing the rest in class. Have a great night, guys.